It's another Manly Monday, and we're going to continue the streak with men who are abused. And heavy, but people seem to appreciate it, so I'm going to keep going. Because somebody asked about doing a video about, it gets better kind of thing. Because it's a bleak topic, right? And so now I'm going to talk about how to move on, even though, maybe it's a partial move on. Maybe this is the sort of stuff that I do on my mental health work with a lot of people, and it is a process. So I'll do the help support this channel, and then I'll do the caveat on this video. So help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Or if you want to buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who needs personal attention for stuff like this, but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. So yeah, the caveat is this is a process. Even if you can do like one of these things early on, great. It is more, this is what happens, not something you should try to do, because healing doesn't happen on any particular timeline. That's very important to remember. You go at your pace. There is no requirement to be in a relationship. And with men, I don't know if it's cultural or if I don't know, but I know far more guys who are just destroyed by a bad relationship. And this could be a skewed sample, the type of guys I know versus the type of women I know. But women, I don't know, it's a sort of thing of, it was a bad relationship. He was, he did some things wrong. Square it, move on, mostly. But a lot of guys I talk to, they're still trying to protect their ex or not think the worst of them. And that's very noble. But the knock-on effect is that there's a risk that you start to see it as something women do as opposed to something your ex did. And the challenge is, right, that at one point you thought this was the greatest person on the planet. And we know that as men get older, men have far fewer friendships, definitely fewer close friendships, and fewer long-term friendships than women do. And so that, romantic partner becomes very, very central. And then it's gone, right? And especially, if you have to leave, it's one thing. I find a lot of guys, they kind of check out and pull away, and so it's the woman that technically does the breaking up, but it's just because the guy didn't know how, because it's that whole fear of being abusive yourself, fear of hurting feelings. I hear a lot of guys talk about, they sort of dissociate the minute there's hurt feelings. They don't know how to handle it. Now, that particular bit is something you will want to work on before you get into a new relationship, because that's an essential conflict skill. And that's going to be the next workshop in June. I'm not officially promoting it, but just so people know to look for it. It will be in June. I might actually do like multiple times this time so that more people can make it. Because the weekend worked really well for some people, but there were some people that, anyway, getting derailed. It is possible to disagree with someone, or, hurting someone's feelings doesn't make you bad. It doesn't inherently make you abusive, right? There's hurting feelings, and then there's breaking boundaries. Now, what's the difference? sometimes you have to tell someone something that's going to hurt their feelings. And the goal is to do it when it's a smaller hurt as opposed to a bigger hurt. When you're maximizing damage, when you know something's a pain point and you attack it to win the fight, that's abuse. Doesn't make you an abuser, but that is an abusive tactic. When it's like, look, when you realize I got to tell them this now, because if they find out months from now, it's going to be, they didn't have a chance to course correct. As someone who's had that happen, it's awful. And the frustrating thing is, so often it was people doing it to me because I'm a woman and fragile, and they were protecting me. And then by the time it would have been an easy correction, like just a pivot in approach, but nobody told me until, oh, well, it's not working out. We can't work with you. Well, why not? Well, because you do this. Well, nobody told me. Yeah, well, we didn't want to upset you. So now you're dumping me. That's not upsetting. That's what you want to avoid, right? And someone may get upset. Someone even may claim you're harming them. This is a real thing to me. Because abuse causes harm, yes. But not all hurt feelings are harm. And establishing the rules, establishing the boundaries in a relationship early is very important. Basic rule of thumb is, if someone says stop doing something, it doesn't matter if you agree you should or not do it. It's okay to ask questions about an alternative, but I find there's this thing of, no, I'm going to keep doing this until you give me an alternative because you're silencing me. Don't do that. I get the impulse behind it, because a lot of abuse of men is very subtle, right? And silencing tactics are one of them. The two things that get overlooked are like destruction of property is not seen as violence, and the manipulation and manipulation's a tough word because a lot of women don't realize they're doing it. I know I'm being very heterosexual here. A lot of people assign female at birth who are cisgender women don't see certain things they're doing that are manipulative because their mother did it, their aunt did it, their grandmother did it. It's just what women do, according to them. And so they legit don't see how it's an abusive behavior. And this is difficult because it's abusive, but the intent was not to abuse. This is just the way things are done. Not all women are socialized that way. And some women were socialized that way, and it either didn't take or they learned to own their shit. This was always a problem for me growing up. I took to calling it the nice game. The nice game is, the winner pushes the loser into a place where they have to stop being nice. They have to be authentic. They have to just say what's on their mind. And, oh God, then that's terrible. And the nice game is rampant in girl world. I'm seeing it a lot more with men as male socialization has become more demonized. But I'm one of these people. It's better to have the fight early when it's smaller than to avoid it until it's huge and the resentment is so built up that it's, everything's on fire by the end. You want to have smaller conflicts more frequently because then everybody is less compromised and it's easier to go, okay, I need you to not do that. I want to hear you, but that thing I need you to not do that. It has a bad effect on me. And this takes getting used to. especially when you've been in a relationship where the expectation was that you read your partner's mind. And that's a very tough thing to unlearn, because if you didn't mind read, doom, right? And that, we see that in media all the time, right? The guy who knows the perfect thing to say, he knows just what to do. He doesn't have to be told, he doesn't have to ask. It's just, oh, it's perfect. And that's not life on an ongoing basis. You can get lucky sometimes, but sometimes the difference between, I'm going to go there, like the creepy guy in an episode of She-Hulk and, the dreamy guy in Name a Show is guessing right. And obviously, long term, that's no better than chance. You can do better than that if you actually get healthy communication channels. And we don't have a lot of examples in media of healthy communication channels. The only show I can think of that models it regularly is Superman and Lois. I know. I love that show for that reason. They actually, they have conflict, but it's not horrible, awful anger, because he's Superman, right? If he gets angry, he can really hurt somebody. It's so good that way. But there aren't a lot of examples of really healthy relationships in media because Hollywood thinks that's not interesting. And to me, there is nothing more interesting than a healthy, functional relationship. But if you don't come from a family that modeled that, it's really hard to find. And that's why socialization with people who do have healthy conflict skills and do have healthy boundary setting that you can associate with and learn it's okay is really, really important to healing. And because men don't have those social groups the same way, it's based on activities where guys don't talk about what's bothering them because then you're ruining other people's fun, right? They don't get those examples. And so you get into a new relationship with all the old fears from the previous relationship. And those fears are valid. And unless you have someone to work through that with, that can carry over and you can start seeing things that aren't there in the new relationship. And you may have somebody who's super patient, but most people aren't going to be, nor should they be expected to be, because what you end up doing is accusing people of having motivations they didn't have. And obviously that's going to upset somebody. And there's an example of everybody has reasons, everybody is valid, but the results were not good. And I mean, that's why I want to start up men's groups so that we can work through some of this stuff and some of the supports I've seen in the other bubbles and the other stuff where people form really lasting friendships and they feel understood. That sense of feeling understood and seen and valued is so important to moving forward, because in that bad relationship that you're getting out of, you weren't. And trust me, the emotional scars cut deeper and last longer than any physical thing someone could do to you. The physical stuff is the threat overriding the coercive control. And it's the lies you told to your friends, either out of self-preservation or a feeling to protect them. The stuff you just took because it was easier than the blow up. That's the stuff that lingers. It's not just trauma. It's something that the psychiatric community has named moral injury. I can talk about that more if you want. But this is very real. And the guys that go on to have fulfilling relationships after an abusive one have to reestablish normal in a place that's healthy, because otherwise you get very understandable false red flags. And women do this too, but we talk about it with women a lot more, and in some ways it's seen as more valid because the whole abused women, domestic abuse has become so gendered, but we know the statistics. 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men have suffered some sort of, sexualized abuse, gendered abuse, or domestic violence, intimate partner violence in their lives. 1 in 3, 1 in 4. And sure, okay, it still happens to women, but a quarter of men. A quarter of men. And that number is increased from 1 in 6 only 5 years ago. So men are reporting it more, and that's really good. That's really, really important. And there's an example of, we can say, yes, it happens to women more often. And the financial abuse is different, right? Because with women, it's the man earns more money, the woman stays home. If there's kids, usually the woman is the primary caregiver. And that, sets your career back enough. And even if you're not, if there's not, hello, Scout, if there's not children, there's things you have to make a choice about who's going to do what, who's going to look after the household stuff, whose career gets the focus first. And, because of various things, it often is the one partner that focuses on career and one that works as sort of support class, right? And that's not just heterosexual relationships, that's same-sex relationships as well, and disability, whatnot, just dumb luck. But with men who are financially abused, there's this added component of, she got hold of his debit card, right? Or demanded he spend a lot of money, or there are these coercion things where technically it was a choice, but was it really? That's what coercion is, right? So those emotional, physical, sexual, financial boundaries, time boundaries, all have to be reestablished, and that's better to do before you get into a new relationship. It's something to do for you. And a lot of guys don't realize that they need that until they get into a new relationship, and it's like, this is scary. When things are going really well, it's like, when's the bottom going to drop up? And then there's like those first few conflicts, and it's immediate shutdown because you're expecting this is where it's all going to go bad. And it's not conscious. It's not conscious, right? It's feelings, it's nervous system, it's limbic system. And none of this is a moral failing. This is all your brain and your body trying to keep you safe. So please give me your questions on this one. This is one where it's going to be very specific to the circumstances. But hello, Scouty. I know guys who are doing much better years after an abusive relationship, even if the ex-partner is still out there griefing them. They're still in a better place. So give me your questions and help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it, who can't afford it, who might be dealing with an issue like this. Coffee.com/LeannaK. We're still trying to meet our goal of 6 people need support right now. So if you can't give, I greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, thanks for watching Manly Mondays.